Let's do this properly, start to finish, how a secondary market deal actually works here. The two forms that happen before you even see a listing, how you find it, how you make an offer, the form that actually locks in the deal, signed digitally, what happens at the trustee office, which and what doesn't, cash versus financing, what documents you need, and how to do all of it from outside the country. Full journey, right order this time. Before we get into finding a property, there's two forms that happen first, and most buyers have no idea they exist. On the seller's side, there's Form A. This is the agreement between the seller and their broker, signed digitally through DLD's system called Trakisi. It's basically the seller saying, you're authorized to market my property at this price under these terms. Once that's signed, the system issues a permit number, and that's what actually makes a listing legitimate. A seller can sign Form A with up to 3 different brokers at once, so the same property might show up through a few different agents, all legally. Once that's signed, the process can officially begin. On the buyer side, there's the matching form, Form B. This is you signing digitally with your own broker before you really start the process. It formalizes that this agent represents you, your budget, what you're looking for. This happens first, not as an afterthought once you've already found something you like. Here's why both of these matter to you. If an agent can't produce a Trakisi permit number for a listing it's not actually authorized, that's your filter for a real listing. And having your own Form B in place means there's a clear record of who's representing your interests, which matters if anything gets disputed down the line. Once you've got your agent under Form B, this is where the actual search happens. Property Finder, Bayut, Dubizzle, the big 3 portals. That's where most listings live. You can also check the Dubai Rest app directly for transaction history and ownership info. But a lot of the best resale deals never even hit these portals. They move through agent networks first, someone's relocating, someone needs cash fast, and their broker calls a few of us before it's ever publicly listed. That's the value of actually having relationships in this market, not just scrolling listings yourself. Once you find something you want, you make an offer through your agent. Verbal first loop, that's where negotiation actually happens. Negotiating price, timeline, and what's included. If you're financing, get your mortgage pre-approval sorted before this stage, not after. Sellers take financed offers a lot more seriously when there's already a pre-approval letter behind it. Once price and terms are actually agreed, that's when things move to paper, or more accurately these days to screen. This is the part people get wrong the most. Form F, the actual sale contract, the MOU between you and the seller, is signed digitally now. Not at a trustee office. You don't need to physically show up anywhere for this step. Your broker generates Form F once every term is locked. Both sides sign digitally now, locking in the binding agreement. And that's your binding agreement. This is also when you pay your deposit, typically 10% of the purchase price held in trust until the deal completes. Read every clause before you sign, even digitally. This is the document that protects you if anything goes wrong later, so don't rush it just because the property is exciting. Now the seller has to get an NOC, a no objection certificate E, from the original developer. This confirms there's no outstanding service charges or liabilities on the unit and the developer has no objection to the sale. This usually takes about a week. Without it, the property legally cannot transfer. This is one of the most common places deals get delayed, so as a buyer, confirm with your agent that it's actually been submitted, not just promised. Now, by this point, Form F is already signed, your deposit's already paid. So when people talk about the trustee office, that's not where the contract gets signed. That's purely where ownership actually transfers. If you're a cash buyer, once the NOC is in hand, you book that trustee appointment. You show up with your ID and a manager's check. At the appointment, you hand over the check. DLD collects its transfer fee, around 4% of the purchase price plus admin charges, is an ownership transfers right there. You walk out with a new title deed in your name. Usually the same appointment. Cash deals can realistically close in 2 to 4 weeks, start to finish. Finance buyers, same overall structure, more steps. You got pre-approved before the offer, like I mentioned. Once Form F is signed, the bank moves into the full mortgage process, sends their own valuer to assess the property. Here's something important. The bank moves into the full mortgage process and assesses everything. The bank's valuation, not your agreed purchase price, determines your actual loan amount. If it comes in lower than what you agreed to pay, you cover that gap yourself. They inspect the property thoroughly. After valuation, the bank issues a final offer letter. Then there's mortgage registration with DLD, a small additional fee. On transfer day at the trustee office, the bank's manager's check covers their portion. You bring the remainder. Finance deals typically take 4 to 6 weeks. sometimes longer. Quick rundown for everyone. Valid passport, Emirates ID if you're a resident. If financing, your pre-approval letter. Salary certificate or proof of income and bank statements. For the transaction tenor, your signed Form B, the signed Form F, the NOC. And on transfer day, your manager's check. If there's an existing mortgage on the property, you'll also need a liability letter and discharge confirmation from the seller's bank. Keep copies of everything, every receipt. A lot of international buyers ask me about this. You don't need to be in Dubai for any of this if you've got a power of attorney set up properly. You appoint someone, usually a lawyer or a trusted licensed agent, as your representative through a special POA. It needs to name the specific property and transaction, exactly what powers you're granting. If you're issuing it from outside the UAE, it goes through an attestation chain, a notary in your home country, then your country's foreign ministry, then the UAE embassy or consulate there. Then legalization with the UAE's Ministry of Foreign Affairs once it lands here. Even after all that, it still needs registering with the Dubai Court's Notary Public. Before your representative can actually use it, budget 2 to 4 weeks for that whole chain, sometimes longer. Start it early. Don't wait until you've already found the property. Once it's ready, your representative can handle everything. They can sign Form B, Form F, handle the NOC follow-up, attend the trustee appointment, and collect the title deed, all without you setting foot in the country. Only give that POA to someone licensed and accountable. This document gives someone real legal authority over a transaction worth a lot of money. So that's the actual journey, in the right order, Form A and Form B before anything starts, finding the listing, the offer, Form F signed digitally once terms are locked, the NOC, and then the trustee office. Next video, we're doing the off-plan version of this because that process looks pretty different. If this helped you actually understand how this works, follow. I'll keep breaking these down properly.